Welcome back. So in my last video, thank you for everyone who watched and responded with polite comments and encouraging comments. But in my last video, I talked about kind of a change in direction for the channel, and a lot of that has to do with a change in direction for myself and my workflow as well. And that's really what I wanted to talk about here. So I mentioned in the past that my primary camera is kind of out being repaired. No idea when I'm going to get it back. That's fine though. Things take time, and I'm not in a super hurry. So while that camera was out for repair, had my Pentax 67 II, which I just sold. And the reason I sold it is because of days like today. So it's 80 degrees outside. It's beautiful. It's sunny. This is the first real nice weekend Portland has had in months. We have long winters. It's gray, it's rainy, and I like it, but it gets to a certain point where you're almost into June, and you need a little bit of sun, and you need to get outside. So unfortunately though, I'm sitting here scanning. Luckily I have my laptop, and I brought my Epson downstairs, and so I can plop myself on the couch and either watch Netflix or make YouTube videos or kind of do whatever. I've got a book here, just occupy my time while I scan at 5-minute intervals. And so this as a workflow has been going on for some time. This film right here is from August. So still scanning, and this is kind of what I wanted to get into, in that it had gotten to the point where for me, and the truth is, for a lot of people who watch this, photography is ultimately a hobby. It's not something where you're making a whole bunch of money off of it. You might make a couple bucks here and there. Maybe you pick up a gig, maybe you do a photo shoot for someone, and you kind of earn enough money to keep stringing you along. It's like the carrot at the end of the stick. It's out there, and sometimes you'll be able to touch it, but you never really get to enjoy it. You never really get to have it as your own. And so we keep going, and the money that we earn kind of helps feed into the hobby. Maybe that $200 goes and gets you a whole bunch more film or whatever it might be. But anyway, it's at the end of the day, it's a hobby, and really nothing more. And one thing about a hobby is that you should enjoy doing it. I mean, it's why people pick up hobbies in retirement, right? You have all this free time now. What are you going to do with it? How are you going to occupy your time, and how are you going to have a good time doing whatever it is you're doing? And sitting here on a day like today and scanning, and knowing that I've been scanning for the past week, and that I'll probably be scanning for the next week or two to come, because on the back of my dining table there is a whole bunch more film from the last year that needs to be scanned. And so it stopped being fun for me. I haven't put out a publication in, about 9 months, I'd say, since last September was when the 4th issue of Landscapes came out. And part of that is because for me, it had gotten to the point where as I'm scanning, the work and the effort that went into it had overtaken and removed any of the, not interest, but just kind of pleasure that I was getting out of seeing my images. It was just so much involved that typically when I put together a series, or when I put together a publication, as I did with all 4 issues of Seraph and Silver, as I did with the 4 volumes of Landscapes, things for me, they just come together, and they either work naturally and they just kind of form before me, or they don't. I don't really put a whole bunch of effort into it. I don't specifically go out and find photographs that I want to include in a series. I just take photos wherever I'm at, and on the back end, they just kind of come together. And actually, it's funny, as I'm talking about this now, I have a couple of notes here up for me for bullets I want to touch on, but I'm really realizing this is really part 2 of that other video I posted the other day. So that wasn't happening for me, and I needed to stop and refocus. and really redefine what it meant for me to take images and to get something out of them, and to really enjoy this again. And I'm sure what I'm saying now, it's not a foreign language. A lot of people have gone through very similar issues where they will, they'll kind of hit a lull. You go into any sort of like photography forum or social network or anything, and people talk about like just not feeling into it. And my go-to advice has always really been put together a publication, because for a lot of people, it's something that they've never done. And so the process and the interaction of choosing 200 photos, printing them out, laying all your prints out, and start finding the stories that come together is something that works and that can help really kickstart it. For me, it's something I do already, and so trying to find the inverse of that, or trying to find something outside of my regular workflow is a foreign concept. I don't really know what I should be doing. So anyway, so I needed a drastic change in my workflow, and I talk on social media to a lot of people, but there are a few people who I really treat as confidants, and through some of these more private discussions that if you went to like my Twitter timeline, you wouldn't necessarily see. There's been discussions about what it really means to be a photographer and what's the most important part. And the most important part at the end of the day is the images. So it would have been about, I think I made that video 6 years ago now on my old YouTube channel, which is why I forget what it was called, switching from digital to film or something like that. I had sold off my digital camera equipment, and I bought my Leica. It was my first real big camera purchase. And it was big for me, and I shot with film exclusively for a long time, but now I'm kind of coming to a point where I need to. I've seen a shift in my photos, and so as I mentioned in the previous video, there was that correlation between cameras and photography and them being treated as one. And over the last few years, as I've focused more on presentation and publications and storytelling within my images, that connection has been removed, and instead of cameras, it's really been replaced, with the story. And so story and photography for me, that's really where I'm at, and that's the direction that I need to be going in order to advance who I am, both as a person and just as a photographer. So I made a pretty drastic decision here, and I haven't really announced this anywhere. I might post a photo on Instagram later today, and we'll see what people think. But I sold my Pentax 67 II to buy, I think you can see that, to buy a digital camera. It's a Fuji X100F. I'm using it right now to record these videos. It's really, really great image quality. And I ran into some trouble with that, primarily because the thing that I had told people, the reason that I shot film exclusively, for me anyway, wasn't so much about the color or the tonality or all these other things that many photographers talk about, which are important, and I appreciate the aesthetic, but ultimately what was important for me was that I knew every time I pressed the shutter, I was creating something. I was literally making a thing. It exists. I can touch it. I can, cut it out. I can lick it. It doesn't matter. I can throw it away. It's something. It exists. It's not a series of ones and zeros. And so for me anyway, that felt so much more real. And over time, I've come to really understand that it almost is a cheapening of photography, because I wasn't really focused on what I was creating. I was focused so much more on just creating something. It was an easy way out, because even if I didn't do anything with these 4 images right here, even if they were throwaway photos, they don't mean anything, they don't serve any purpose, they don't offer any story, they existed. And so I could shoot photographs for a whole year and not do anything with them. I could just get them developed. I don't even have to get them developed. They could just sit on the roll in a drawer somewhere, undeveloped, unseen by anyone, including myself. but I had created something. And that really, it started to feel dishonest. It started to feel untrue to myself, because the goal for me isn't just to create anything, right? That shouldn't be the goal for any artist. You should not take the easy way out. And so I made this big shift, and I bought this digital camera right here with the explicit goal of creating things outside of the image itself. Whether that's prints, whether that's bigger series, I don't know. But that's really what I want to be doing. And so I haven't committed 100% to this as a setup. As a digital camera and this kind of hybrid workflow, I still do intend to use my Leica. I still have a Pac-On scanner upstairs, which I love. I plan to shoot a lot of 35mm film. I've got quite a bit of travel coming up over the summer, but I wanted to give it a try. And so for the next 4 months or so, I've promised myself that I'll be keeping this with me. I will be keeping this Fuji X100F here, and I'll be using it to photograph. I'll be using it as part of my workflow, and I'll be using it really interchangeably. And I'm really hoping to start just producing some content that I'm happy with and that means something to me. And so that, in a nutshell, is the explanation for this shift for me and for us here as we're having this conversation. And I'm unsure where it's going to go, but I hope that you'll continue watching and that you'll stick with me through it. Coming up next time, we're going to talk about some zines and some publications, not necessarily what the publications are themselves, but just kind of the workflows that go into them and what's so important about them. So thank you for watching. Please be sure to follow me on social media. I've included the links below, and until next time.